All right, welcome back, everyone. Hope you're having a good evening. We are back with vBrownBag this week for our presentation with Denis Dyack, who's going to go over From Zero to AWS Hero. And before we get rolling, I have some show notes for you. Let's see if I can slide to move. Oh. So some quick notes. You're more than welcome to get in on the conversation. We will be monitoring Twitter at the following handles, so feel free to tweet your questions there. Or if you'd like to participate in the Q&A feature of the Zoom itself, you're more than welcome to do that as well. All three of us will be keeping an eye on that. You can follow and subscribe for additional vBrownBags at vbrownbag.com/brownbags to subscribe to the Zoom webinars. You can follow our guest, Denis Dyack, on Twitter at Denis_Dyack, and you can follow our hosts, Chris Williams at mistwire.com, myself is at Signy Angler, and Sean Doyle at Cloud.
Did you have to check? You've known that Twitter handle for at least 10 years.
Oh, I was trying to get you to say it for me, but that's
okay. Oh, hey everybody, I'm Chris. You can follow me at Mistwire. Ha. Sean, your turn. Oh, I guess he's being quiet.
Oh, and I'm Sean Doyle. You can follow me at Cloud Osmotic.
All right, and with that, I will stop the share and hand it over to Denis.
Great, and I will attempt to share the screen here. Let's go. I think this is working. Everyone can see this?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming. I really appreciate it. And I hope I'm able to give some insight into some of the things we're doing at Apocalypse and how we think about games and how we have done what I would say a very rapid fundamental change in our structure and our thinking that really revolves around AWS and EC2 systems, but a lot of quite frankly, AWS, and we're really quite excited about it. And we do want to share the knowledge with everyone that we can, because I think we've really are starting to look at an event horizon as far as business goes and the way that business is done. And anyway, so let me jump right into it. So who am I? For many people listening to this, if you're coming from the AWS server side or just trying to look at, clouds and things like that, I'm a video game veteran, been in the video game industry now for over 30 years. If you play a lot of video games, you might know some of my earlier works. I created Blood Omen Legacy of Kain, Eternal Darkness, Santa's Requiem, worked on Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes with Kojima-san, worked with Miyamoto-san on Eternal Darkness, of course, and many others. Been in the industry for quite a while. And the current project I'm working on is Dead House Sonata, and I like to say I'm coming back from the dead working on Dead House Sonata. Dead House Sonata is a action RPG that is narrative driven, where you play the undead fighting the living. So like behind my picture here, you can play Revenants, which this is our first release of last week. We released what our in-game models are going to look like. We're super excited about it. All the stuff that's coming out, all the new technologies coming out are really exciting. And you can play a Revenant, you can play a Vampire, you can play Banshees, Ghouls, Wraiths, lots of fun. And a bit more background on me. My background is generally, I come from computer science. I got a bachelor's degree in computer science. I went on to do a master's where I focused on artificial intelligence, neural networks, and user interfaces. And I also, ironically, have a phys ed degree as well, which was my first degree. Despite all that stuff, I'm known for writing in video games, so telling stories, and I love to tell stories. Dead House Sonata is no different than some of the games I just mentioned, where we're really focusing on a lot of story. And so since that's what I'm used to doing, I'm going to tell you a story of Apocalypse, and I'm going to tell you a story of how we went from I would say virtually no cloud experience to being so immersed in it. I could not imagine we could ever go back. And when we talk to people about the transformation that's occurred, they're actually quite shocked. So the story is going to be about how we started Apocalypse as a typical developer to where we're not only completely in the cloud as a company now, but it's fundamentally changed the way we think about the creation of our projects and our products. And it has massively affected Deadhouse Sonata. So let's go there. So let's start it off by, we're a typical startup. In 2018, we opened our doors. We're located in the Niagara region, and we're a typical startup. We had an office, and it was open concept. Everyone had desks with a computer. And our goal was, when we wanted to create the company, we wanted to create a cloud first company. So a lot of the stuff we're going to be doing, we're going to be looking at the cloud to see what was out there. And we were very interested in it. We saw a lot of trends happening, particularly the free to play market was expanding greatly. That really caught our interest, and not in the ways that a lot of people will think, but I'll probably dive into a little bit about that shortly. So yeah, that was, Apocalypse. And one of the things, if you sit back and you listen to me over the years, I have a very consistent, I would say, themes that I like to talk about. And one of the most important ones to me is Marshall McLuhan's "The medium is the message." That is such a profound thing for video games, but I think it goes to all parts of life. And when you're to understand clouds and to be effective in this new environment, which we find ourselves in now, I think it's really important to think about the clouds as a medium, because that's really where everything has gone. They have had a significant economic impact on games. And you might be, well, what is that significant impact? Well, that is the free-to-play market. If you have a free-to-play game, it's generally something that you sign into, and it's free to play. You can play the entire thing without spending any particular amount of money. But what's happened is you log in and you can create and buy microtransactions, and this is where they make their money. This model started in Korea, but really exploded coming from China. And the reason it did explode in China was not for the reasons that people think. Copyright laws are not the same in China as they are in the West. And they had to deal with things where if someone downloaded the game, they would, often buy a computer with software installed. The copyright laws just weren't as strict. It's a social thing. It's just the way. It's a complete cultural difference compared to the West. And so they had to figure out a way of making money. And the way to make money is to change your commodities model, which we make a game every 4 years. We drop it at Christmas, which is what dominates the AAA industry, to making it a service model where you give something out for free. And if they like it, they continue to support you with buying, cosmetic items. And so this is going to come as shock to many people, but free-to-play games now represent 86% of all global revenue. Actually, it's probably higher now. It continues to increase. And so the AAA games that we know, like Call of Duty, all the big, games are games that I used to be known for, are a very small percentage of the marketplace. So we saw this and we're like, okay, this is a direction. And it's actually, if the medium is clouds, the medium is the message. So we really had to start thinking about that. So when we started looking at different engines, we knew that this was the direction we wanted to go. And this was really at the time when Amazon Lumberyard, people really started talking about it. And it was one of the engines we analyzed. We really liked it. It had a great renderer. It was modular. It was completely free, which was a huge bonus. But on top of that, the integration into Amazon was something that we thought would be pretty key. So that is the engine we adopted. We had no idea once we did that, what would come with that was a large number of Amazon people who just started talking to us about possible integrations, and were, really getting us acclimatized to what's out there and what we could do with AWS. Because the first time that I logged into that console just to start up our WordPress site, which is still going now, it's a lot better. There's people doing a lot more than I was back then. I saw that panel open up. I was just completely overwhelmed. I was like, what is this thing? How do I do this? There's like literally 70 things in this pull down menu. And so that was, really literally in 2018 when we opened up. So that we really had no experience, and I didn't have any, none of our guys did when we first started, guys and girls. And I think as well that understanding this medium and where it's going is really key to community. So just before we started the official part of this talk, we were talking about our Discord community. We were talking about, our forums, how we can get others, how we can look at sort of community created content, which I'll talk more about at the end of the talk. These and metagaming, these are all things that are coming into what I would say is this new medium, and understanding this transformation before you can convince others in your company. And when you want to talk about, hey, maybe we should start thinking about these things, you really need to understand this. So when people field questions that you're not used to, you can say, well, this is how the cloud would work this way, and this is why I think it would help us. And I found that to be incredible as far as motivation goes, and as far as insight in just keeping excitement up, because there's it's so much unexplored potential in the cloud right now. We're out finding things all the time when we talk to people like, I don't know, that's never been done before. That's really cool though. And this is even within Amazon itself, because they have so many different groups of people, and just combining some of the different services in different ways, you can find unique things in of themselves. So understanding clouds, understanding the medium, super, super important. So let me describe our office setting a little bit more. I would say that we were just like 99% of all game developer startups. We bought PCs, we had a LAN, and we had what's called a custom build server. And what we did is we bought a shell of a machine, or just a case. We put the fastest CPUs we could get at the time, the fastest hard drives we could get, no video boards, waste of power. It's never going to display anything. And all this machine would do, we're using GitLabs as source integrity. It would take all the Git files, all the work that people would do, put it all together, and do what's called a clean build, where it build the game from the ground up with all fresh assets. So you're guaranteed you could track every asset, and you would do a clean build from scratch that would basically be the best way of testing everyone's changes. Now, when you do something like that, it actually takes quite a long time. And even though we were just starting up, that actually would take between 6 and 8 hours, and it would run nightly. And you would do that so when people would come in the morning, they'd, rather than have to compile the game, like say the artists who aren't doing a lot of compiling, they just want the latest build with all the latest toys that the programmers would put in the day before. They would just pull it down, download it, and then start working away at the graphics, which is what they want. So it's a tried and true method of, just how you make games. So that was us. That was us in 2018. And I would say that was going for quite a while. We had some initial prototypes out there, started really small, super small team, tried to show some things as early as we can. And right at the time, we really started to really push narrative. And we really wanted to start telling the world that, hey, we've got all these ideas in narrative. We're starting to understand the cloud more. We have, what would it be like to start bringing narrative to a free-to-play space, on which a lot of people would think is generally an oxymoron. And we had talks planned at GDC in March. We had a demo, which we're really excited with, called Memento Mori, where we had done a leap in the graphics. We knew we weren't done, but we had done a leap in the graphics where we're like, okay, this is beyond prototype now. We're really starting to light this a lot better. We're really starting to get to the point where we think people will start to see the vision of the game. And we were getting all ready. We had interviews lined up. We had business meetings all lined up. GDC is one of the best places to do business, as well as do talks and talk with colleagues and other developers. And then, of course, COVID came onto the scene. Conferences were canceled. We were shocked. As a matter of fact, there was only a few of us in the office, and everyone was sort of taking a break before we went to GDC because we had such a hard push. And I remember looking across at Yuri just going, I think we're going to be going into martial law. No one really knew what was going on. And we realized if they shut down the office, we were going to be dead in the water. So we called Amazon up, and we were like, we just need to move this all to the cloud. And ironically, about six 6 months earlier, I would say we visited Amazon in Seattle, and we talked about all the things we liked about the engine, all the things that we thought could be improved. And we blue skied, what would it be like to move all of our build process that you have here up into the cloud? We had some really good ideas, and we talked to Amazon how they could maybe change some of the code to make it even easier. But as soon as we got on the plane, it was like, these are all great ideas, but we got to make our game. We got to get out there. We got to do demos. And so you forget about it right away. And luckily for us, they were actually really good ideas. And we connected with Amazon and said, help, the world's closing. We need to get all our stuff up into the cloud. So we just started uploading our entire Git repository, which was very big. Well, at least for us, we're still starting small, but it took a whole week of solid uploading. And then at the same time, we started looking at, okay, how can we go from this local LAN server to moving it to an EC2 instance and building and compiling. And it was terrifying because we knew at that point, no one would be in the office because you couldn't group together anymore. There would be, what would it like to work remotely? We had no idea. I've always been a person that face-to-face contact is the best type of interaction because of the amount of bandwidth and reciprocity that you get face-to-face. I still believe that is true, but my whole perspective on that has changed quite a bit, actually, where there are some huge benefits of being remote, and then there are some downsides as well. I'll go into that later. And then we also didn't know what it would be like with the last mile. A lot of people, we didn't have commercial internet connections from everyone's home. These were just like local cable modems that everyone had to play video games on. And we had no time. We had 2 weeks. We were doing this every day. We were watching the clock. They're going to shut it down. They're going to shut everyone down. And we actually got this done literally within 2 weeks. And I think it was 2 days later, the government just shut everything down and said, okay, that's it. Businesses are closed. We'll update everyone when they can. So we took very aggressive action on this. We created a Git repository, all of our LFS storage, so all of our graphics and all of the stuff that is typically not associated with Git went into an S3 bucket. And we moved our Git server from the custom built server to an instance on EC2. And then we explored several paths, and this is like what you see here in this graph is what we really came up with. We used, Lambda, CloudWatch, and it was incredible, really. And this was the insane thing. Because with an EC2 server, you can suddenly scale up the amount of computers doing the compile. It went from, I say, average 7 hours a night down to 20 minutes. It was astounding. We're like, wow, because we'd just be like, let's make it 1,000 for a while the build's going on, and then we'll shrink it back down. And the costs were with transferring all the data with all these huge builds that we do. Well, if you keep it within AWS, you don't actually get charged for the bandwidth, so it's actually quite cheap. And at 20 minutes per build, it turned out to cost $2. So we were worried about the price before then, how we're going to afford this. We're not sure what's going on. If you do the math, there's no way we spent, I think it was like $15K on our custom built server. There is no way that a year or 2 years, you're talking about, $700, $800 a year to do compiles at, thousands of times faster. This was way better than what we had, and it's way cheaper. So, and you usually, what you usually don't get, it's always the typical axiom: do you want faster, better, or cheaper? And in this particular case, we went from brick mortar to these virtual build systems. It was faster, better, and cheaper. So 7 minutes or 7 hours down to 20 minutes. It's 2,100% faster. And we no longer had to worry about carrying a hard drive out of our office in case the office burnt down to another, to somewhere in a bank vault or something where we keep all of our archives every month or so, because we have full backups on the cloud and we can move it all over the place. It's awesome. It's fireproof. It's more secure. This was just the way to go. And, we never really looked back at that point. Like, this is so incredible. It's like, wow. And we did it in 2 weeks. Now, it's not exactly something we wanted to do. Essentially, we were pushed off the cliff, but it was incredible for us. And the one thing that we were really concerned about was this last mile. What's it going to be like for people to work at home and then upload their changes, to somewhere in the Amazon cloud through a regular cable modem, where typically download speeds are fine, but upload speeds are very, very slow. And so what we thought when we did this, when we first started doing this, we said to everyone on the team, if you want help and your modems need upgrading, the company will help cover the costs. We have to make sure you can work efficiently. Turns out no one asked for an upgrade at all. It was amazing. And so this was back in March, and incredible. Since that time, I think officially we've upgraded one person's modem. And that was because I would say it just wasn't the right setup before. So we helped them change the setup and we got everything aligned better. And now that person's rocking and rolling too, but it's not expensive in any way. So, last mile, no problem. So, yeah, we started telling everyone at AWS and thanking them. And, I was asked to write sort of a detailed explanation of how we did it. And then someone out of the blue just said, hey, do you want to write a blog on this? So I wrote a blog on AWS, and I guess it was pretty popular. It got picked up a lot. So popular, in fact, that I was asked to speak at this event called reInvent. And as a game developer, I had never heard of reInvent before. If you're in the AWS circles, yes, it's a massive conference. I know this now that I've been part of it. It's a huge conference, just amazing. But for me, I was like, what's reInvent? And because we make video games, like I've got GDC, Gamescom, E3, I know all those, Nordic game conferences. That's my wheelhouse. So I spoke at reInvent, did a short 15-minute talk on the things I'm talking about now and how we did it. And I look at it this way: if we could do it, anyone could do it. Because we literally came with no background at all. And it's just, I think, just looking at your structures and just taking that jump, it was super terrifying, for sure, very terrifying. But it worked out, and we're so glad we did. And right after that, I was asked to become an AWS hero again, which I didn't know what an AWS hero was. But I quickly found out, of course, and accepted, and it's been awesome ever since. So now I also became that same year in 2020, became an AWS hero. But this is not the end of the story. This is only the beginning. It gets even crazier. So now we have everyone working from home on the systems that we bought, and they're all uploading to the cloud, and all our build system and infrastructures on the cloud. We then started hearing these rumors of virtual machines. So imagine now that instead of buying a computer, there's these things out there called zero clients. And what a zero client is this empty box that has an internet connection where you essentially plug in your monitor, your keyboard, and your mouse, and everything else, all your compute power, all your graphics power is up in the cloud. And when we had a growth spurt at the end of December, and we had to hire quickly a lot of people over the break, and there was absolutely nowhere we were going to get GPUs. They were sold out everywhere. Trying to buy a computer in the middle of the pandemic, especially for Christmas, very, very unlikely, and in the new year. So we had a problem. We had to spin up these 10 dev machines. How are we going to do it? So we started looking at this. We saw a really good video on, how some people are working on these virtual machines. And the real kicker is where we felt really confident that we should try this is one of our animators was like, oh yeah, all my friends are doing this at Industrial Light and Magic. They use these zero clients. We're like, wow. So they're using Max and Maya. We're like, wow, we can make games. And we saw a video of someone using the Unreal Engine on these systems. And the only way I can describe these things is that people describe them as magic. You log in and you absolutely cannot tell the machine is not down here. It seems like a machine you have, except it's all up in the cloud. It's all virtual. And now you're not buying machines, you're buying virtual machines. And what's that like? Well, that turned us into a company without borders. So now not only, since the pandemic, we don't have an office. We decided that we keep one place for storage where we have desks and stuff. When don't know how much longer we're gonna really need that. and everyone decided if we ever got an office again after the pandemic's over, is that we'll do it for social events and have beers together. But there's going to be a real problem now because the company's getting further and further apart. And 75% of Apocalypse now I've never met in person. I speak to them not almost daily for sure, multiple times a day during Skype and Zoom. And I would say we're no longer a Niagara company. We are a Western company. And we have people who are throughout, say, Ontario to BC to the UK. We're now in the Western world. And we're spread out so far, it would be really hard to get together and have a beer. So we doubled in size, and it's crazy. And these machines, if you want to know the cost, well, how expensive are these are, I would say, approximately $5K per year per person. And a typical dev machine will run you anywhere between 5 and 10K, depending on how much power you want with it. But here's the crazy thing. Back when I was running a previous company, Silicon Ice, we had about 230 people or plus more. We had about 4 people full-time. All they would do would fix mice, install operating systems, making sure the hardware was compatible with all the new boards coming out, all that kind of stuff. We can now spin up a machine in 5 minutes and send it out to someone. And it can be any configuration they want. They could have a 10 terabyte solid state drive on it if we want it. If we want to go crazy and buy like these insane machines with like 10 CPUs and GPUs, and you could just go completely crazy with this. You can spin them up, spin them down, change the systems. And as a matter of fact, some of the people who had what I would call bare metal, that's kind of like what we're talking about with just a system still in their house. Many of these people are saying, can I please have a virtual machine, because there's less compatibility issues with a particular setup. And if they had some kind of bug that they couldn't figure out, they say, please just give me a VM. So we spin it up, you pay by the hour. It's really great. Like I said, averages out to about 5K per year. So now we're spread everywhere. And the great thing about this
from the audience.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
No. It's okay. Sorry to interrupt. So the question is this dev machines or graphics machines, or is everyone using zero clients? It would seem that the graphics intensive systems, are they okay to run in the cloud along with everything else?
Absolutely. All machines. So you can have, as a matter of fact, there's special systems on the cloud that are specifically graphically intensive for artists that need real time and like very fast rendering. So yes, every type of machine that you can envision, you can have. As a matter of fact, some of the compiling machines, the programming machines, are a little more lightweight. So you want to be able to use Max, Maya, whether you're using Unreal, in our case, Lumberyard, whatever it's going to be. These are all graphically intensive machines. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep. And so where was I? Sorry, I'm hyper, by the way. So don't never hesitate to jump in like that.
No, this is great stuff. You said that it was okay to interrupt you, so I was trying to wait for you to breathe, but you haven't taken a breath in like 15 minutes. So
I tend to be very hyper, so no worries. And so I see another question in there. Does this make licensing easier? Licensing is amazing. It's just install. We have standard setups. We know exactly, we can even have machines pre-built with a current build of the engine in it. It's just so nice. I can't say enough. So, so yes. And so, that's right. So what does that mean? Well, that means we can create great art like this. Before, I would say in Niagara, you generally tend to hire people within a 50-mile radius, maybe 100-mile radius of your office. Sometimes you get people that'll move, but that's gone now. And now we're working with people that are so talented, in my opinion, that we're doing stuff that we never could have done before. And that is a pretty massive economic change. And we're so happy about it. We really like it. And we think that the future is very, very bright. So that is a huge win, especially to find people who like dark fantasy, games where you play the undead fighting the living. There are people out there like that, but they're definitely not all in the Niagara region. And so it's just a win-win for everybody. Now, I'm a big fan of Deloitte in a particular talk they do every year called Deloitte Predictions. And this year was a particularly good talk. You can go to their website, go to Deloitte Predictions. You can download. They have like, I think 11 or 12 predictions of what the next year is going to be like. They're really, really good. And but they follow statistics on just general consumer products and huge trends in the world. And in this particular case, they were tracking on-premise computing. And what that means is how much CPU power did you have in the office place versus the cloud? And in 2019, it was 59%, and in 2021, it's dropped to 38%. That means more computer power has shifted into the cloud than ever could have previously expected. And then you have like, the CEO of Microsoft saying, we've seen more digital transformation. We've seen 2 years of digital transformation in 2 months. It's so true. This last year, it's almost like there's been 10 years worth of change. And the things have so fundamentally changed for us that I think when I think back about where we are today, I would have thought it would have been impossible if you would have said to me in February 2019, Dennis, you're not going to have an office. And I'd be like, no, we have to have an office. And soon you're going to be working in the cloud. And soon you're not going to buy machines anymore. I don't even think I would have understood what that meant. I know I wouldn't have. I wouldn't even understood the concept, and would have been so skeptical of these VM machines. I would have went, come on. But it's until you try it, it's truly unbelievable. We recently had our COO join, and he joined the company a few months ago. And I was asking him, so what's it like? And he's like, dude, it's like magic. It's unbelievable. It's Paul. And he's amazing. He's been in the games industry for 20 years. He was shocked. So stuff is the real deal. So where are we now? We're all in on AWS. There's so many services and so many things that we're still exploring. There's Lambda, there's gateways, Cognito, databases, GameLift, all this is coming. But where I'm finding more of the excitement is combining services that people really hadn't thought about and really thinking about what's it like to bring narrative to the cloud. And I think that is really, truly where the future lies in video games. And certainly I think it is a it's like a portent to where everyone should be looking, because if you're in any kind of digital industry and you're not thinking about the cloud, I think you should start really thinking about it, because it gives you so many more tools than what we had before. The whole idea of being able to spin up a machine in 5 minutes, literally, instead of like even just going to somewhere and ordering a machine with the latest build takes longer than that. And now it's just like boom, boom, boom. It's amazing. We don't need a particular tech person anymore. If we have a problem with the machine, we can spin it down, copy the images over, spin up a new one. It's just incredible. So, but I want to talk about, it's more than just that. So this is our new business infrastructure for Apocalypse, but where it's more exciting to me is it's fundamentally transformed the way we think about things. And until this time, we were definitely starting to talk about some of the things that we wanted to do. But as we started getting into more and more cloud technology, it started transforming the way, well, what if we tried this? And what if we tried this? And what if we tried this? And this particular thing, which metagaming is one of these particular instances. So I'd like to, this is like a little history lesson of what's happened in the video game industry. So the games that I used to make, that I'm known for, like Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain, Eternal Darkness, Saints Requiem, Metal Gear Solid, they were called single player AAA games, where you sit in front of a TV, the story comes at you. It's non-linear, but it's just, that's the experience. And as I was into the ether for a while and taking, just sort of before I came back from the dead, we then transformed into what I would say now, the largest component of the video game industry now is multiplayer games, where suddenly esports exploded. You have streamers who are becoming, very, very famous just by streaming their games. You have these personalities. You have these, esports tournaments. Esports has totally exploded, all focused on multiplayer, all in and starting to move towards free to play, which is cloud-based, people logging in, competitions in arenas, whether it's Fortnite, League of Legends, Warframe, all of these different things. We're now in what's called the multiplayer era, where I think we're going to go, and where I am now more convinced than ever, is the metaplayer space. And the metaplayer space is, imagine allowing people to play the game outside of your own game. And outside of your own game means, well, they might not even have your game, and they can participate either in the fiction, in the community, or in the game themselves. And one of the things we're doing right now, and we're partnered with GenVid, these guys are great. Imagine you're playing a game and you're streaming it. Imagine if we started putting hooks inside of the actual streaming data on Twitch that allows you to interact in that game like you're having it, and allow you to become, say, a dungeon master, where you're watching the game through Twitch. You don't have the game yourself. You're turning on traps, setting them off, opening gates for players, helping them solve puzzles without even having the game. Then suddenly you have this audience that's watching, but they're also participating. And what I like to think about when I think about this, it's like we're bringing people back finally to the Greek theaters, where the audience could participate, where they could say thumbs up or thumbs down, throw tomatoes at the actors if they weren't doing a good job, but actually affect the outcome in the play and have true agency. And people could literally, have an immersive experience that's truly two-way, that traditionally has always been one-way. That's metaplayer. And I think that is something absolutely could not have started thinking about so much until we started really diving into AWS and understanding how EC2 worked. So truly transformed the way, at least personally for me, the way we were thinking. But we have other ideas too. So let's talk about story. Everyone's like, you can't have story. If you're free to play, where's all the story? And that's just because everyone's been concentrating on the multiplayer gameplay aspects of these things. And free to play games, all the monetization's been in grinding levels and getting gear. But imagine if you started using things like big data and persistent universes stored in the cloud. So because you can store huge amounts of data in the cloud. Imagine if you started storing all the things that players did all the time. And then what if you started using, artificial intelligence combined with, scraping certain types of data to start telling stories that's persistent. And what you get is, you start getting people telling stories of adventures long past. And in a sense, we have the opportunity, by letting people play the game and creating an environment like the Silmarillion in Lord of the Rings, except it's living and breathing. And in some sense, you're combining ideas of Dwarf Fortress with sort of EVE Online. And wouldn't it be amazing if everyone could start sharing those stories? And rather than have a launch or sort of an alpha, we call it the first stage. And then after the first stage, we go into a new set of things. People who've created weapons and somehow they're lost or hidden, that someone finds 7 ages later, becomes a super powerful relic with its own stories that's stored. And we're using big data to tell stories and things that really engage and immerse players. Wouldn't that be something? You could not do that in the games that I made back in the day of Legacy. Again, you could tell a really great story, but you could never do what I'm describing here. And that can only be done in the cloud. And that is completely unexplored territory. So very exciting. And there's more things like these. These are the things that we're working on, but there's a lot more. And then another thing that I particularly like, and I always go back to Game of Thrones. I'm a huge reader, loved Game of Thrones. Did not love the ending in the TV series, of course, like everyone else. And I know the popular theories out there is like, the showrunners wanted to move on to do another series. They were really tired of it, or George R.R. Martin didn't finish the books. That's why it was so bad. And I'm not discounting those. Those might be true. But I think there was another thing going on. And after really thinking about this a lot and analyzing it, I think what they did, the mistakes they made, were not understanding that. And it's, they're making TV, understanding the medium is really hard. So what happened with Game of Thrones, and let me explain what I'm talking about. And then I'll explain where we're going, the direction we're going. But again, it's all about this sort of cloud thinking, metagaming. When Game of Thrones first came out in the first season and really started getting popular, these YouTube channels started coming out all telling you, I think the story's going to go this way. I think the story's going to go this way. Or, oh, what if this happened or that happened? Trying to find out where the plot's going to go. Some people who had read the books were pitching in. And at first, a lot of the ideas were quite frankly garbage. But some of the ideas were really good. As a matter of fact, some of the ideas that were really good, a lot of people would say, hey, that idea is really good. I like that. That sounds like it's right. And then you start having millions and millions of people clinging on to these good ideas to the point where I think it was the third or fourth season, George R.R. Martin was saying, wow, the audience is guessing what I'm doing. And then later on saying, oh, the audience is coming up with story ideas that might be better than mine. And the showrunners, whether they be 20 or 30, however many writers they had, could absolutely not compete with these millions of people who were just on their own because of their pure excitement, coming up with stories that were so good and so looking at the entire breadth and depth of everything that the small group of showrunners that they had working on the series just couldn't compete. And I think the mistake that they made was trying to compete against these groups rather than embrace them. So they tried to I don't know what's the get away from everyone's expectations, and it ended up that they cornered themselves and ended up not doing a great job with the story ended. But where I think this can really come in with us, so I think that's why Game of Thrones the season did not end well. So rather than embracing this community, they tried to fight against it, and they tried to subvert everyone's expectations, is sort of the famous line that people talk about on all these YouTube channels. We embrace this. So I'm known for telling stories. I've told stories all my life. And I think people that play Dead House Sonata, and when people who are going to, expect to play Dead House Sonata, they know that they will get, my sort of traditional view on this, but we're going to do something else. We're going to open up to the community, to other people to tell stories. Because throughout my career, there's been so many people saying, hey, can you do a sequel to Legacy of Kain? What do you think about this story with Legacy of Kain? And I read some of them and they're very good. Can you do a follow-up to Eternal Darkness? What do you think? So rather than wait for any kind of a sequel, and rather than doing these sort of games that just sort of end and then we do a follow, what if we had a living, breathing universe where people can contribute? And then the more that people contribute, they actually can add to this as we're going, and we do it as a group. I think that's going to get us better story and content. And that, again, can only be done in the cloud. It can only be done with large communities. So that's why we have Discords, why we have forums, why we have all these other things. And then I'm going to end off with the holy grail of the video game industry. What if we combined all of these things, and then we started creating procedurally generated story in cinema that just took all the elements of everything, where we had this living, breathing history, where some people could come into the universe for the first time and see what George the Dwarf did in the first age as he fought the giant, the first frost giant, the first time anyone had seen a frost giant in the world of Malorum. And to tell that story, and then that's a clue to something else in their own adventure. That is the stuff that I would fall in love with and lose myself in. And that, I think, shows that not only did all of the thinking about clouds fundamentally change our business and how we think about it, but it's changed the way that we even create our products, because the medium is the message. And that's what the story is, from going from a zero to AWS hero. And I truly feel this way. If we could do it, anyone can do it. And if your business is thinking about, hey, should we look at these virtual machines, or should we start moving our stuff to the cloud? I say absolutely yes. If you're not thinking about it, you should be doing it right now, because we can work in 100% complete lockdown. It's really stressful. And on top of that, we're creating a free-to-play game. And if we create all of these things where our fans and people who want to escape into this game world can really help during the times of the pandemic, then that's a bonus too. So we've got no footprint at all. We're very green. We're very diverse, multicultural. And I think these kind of things are something that is giving us an advantage that we never would have had before. So so that is from zero to AWS hero.
Awesome. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions, but before we get into that, I wanted to preempt. So historically, the vBrownBag has been an IT and architecturally based channel. So so I'm going to ask a couple of architect questions. The transition from your on-prem environment up to AWS, you transferred your data, but then you also had to build out VPs, or I'm assuming build out some form of infrastructure up there to ingest and munge and everything like that. That process, how long did that take you during a pandemic?
We did, between the entire upload and execution, we did in 2 weeks. Everything it was very fast, very frightening. But the interesting thing is, it was I guess from a company standpoint, a life and death decision. Do we just shut down, or do we continue to work? And at that point, I guess video games are pretty leading edge, or what I like to call bleeding edge. There's always a lot of unknown. This was completely, I didn't know anyone else who had done this. I talked to Amazon. They didn't know anyone else who had tried it. And we were doing stuff with GitLabs, and we had talks with a lot of the people there who helped us a lot. But yeah, we did it all in 2 weeks, and we have choice.
So you said that AWS didn't have people do this, so they assisted in the transition? Because
yes,
you said you had zero experience with AWS ahead of time, so clearly somebody had to have known something to.
Oh, so in 2018, a year earlier, we had zero experience, and I would say we slowly started over the year before the pandemic. So 2018 to 2019, as we started using Amazon Lumberyard and talking to people with Amazon quite a bit, we started learning more and more. So we definitely were not. How do you start a WordPress server on an EC2 instance? The tutorial, because that's the first tutorial I ever did with Amazon, and it was
the first one everybody does.
Yeah, I loved it. It was great. I didn't quite understand everything at first, but obviously it's kind of like your hello world, and when you finally figure it all out, you're like, oh, I get all this now. To what we have now, and which was much more complicated. But these were, again, in the summer before, when we were at Amazon in Seattle, we were talking about compile paths and what we thought could improve Lumberyard the most, and all of these different things. We actually spent like half a day, just dreaming about how would the compiler best be optimized if we were all cloud-based. And then we started thinking about how the infrastructure would work. Little did we know that was such an important conversation, because it wasn't just out of the blue. And then so we took these thoughts, combined them with reality, and said, here's what we got. Here's what we got to do. We've got 2 weeks before they shut us down. Help. And we did it. Gotcha. We did it. So that's what happened.
That's fantastic. And the zero clients, those connect with AWS workspaces.
Yes.
And then the workspaces, they then commit to your Git repo, and then CI/CD kicks in. So you're running code pipeline for your CI/CD?
So we're using, that's a question I don't think I know the answer to. I apologize. But we are using Teradici, which is the clients. And the reason we use Teradici is they monitor, they basically shut down the systems when you log out. And so because you can either do this like you can pay for a year or whatever. It's actually most economical to just pay by the minute, depending on how much someone's using the actual server. So we've been working with Teradici now. Strongly recommend them. We found them a really great service that works with AWS, and that's sort of the client we log in. So we log in through Teradici to AWS, get the VMs going, and you don't need a zero client. A zero client is like the icing on the cake, because there's actually a software client that comes with Teradici, which works well too. It just works. It's just faster with a zero client, and you just get more performance, and it's awesome.
I'm currently on the site pricing out a zero client right now.
Yeah, recommended. Offline, we can tell you our experiences, and happy to talk about it in detail. I would need more help and more tech people with me, because I'm the storyteller and the dreamer, and less of the tech.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, I have my gaming rig, so I'm like, oh, if I can have a gaming rig in the cloud, then that's less stuff to have in the house.
Well, the problem with the gaming rig in the cloud is you're still fighting with some amount of lag and latency. So when you're using game engines and you're building 3D models, that's fine. When you're going to be playing something like Doom Eternal, you're going to notice that lag, and it's not quite as good. Now, when everyone figures out how they're, when we figure out quantum entanglement, we get rid of lag.
I knew you were going to go there.
Yeah. Pretty soon I'll be talking about the Serapeum in Egypt as well. But because the last time when we talked about archaeology, but I think when those breakthroughs happen, then we were talking about escalations beyond. I don't even know what that would mean, but it would fundamentally transform gaming forever. There would be so many massive explosions in computational power and just the way we do things. It would be unbelievable.
For the people listening right now and in the future that don't know what we're talking about when we get into quantum entanglement, I highly encourage you to watch last week's episode where we had Denis on again. And this actually engendered this talk, because last week he talked to us to continue the vBrownBag IT career series on how to get into the video game industry. Fantastic talk. Highly encourage you to watch that one as well. But during that talk, we got into quantum entanglement, archaeology, and a whole bunch of other fun topics. Cool. Sorry. All right. Ziggy, Sean, any other questions?
So actually, there's a question from the audience from Mauricio. Asked, do you provide a work from home stipend for your team, chair, desk, headphones?
If I understand, do we like buy headphones and gear? And the answer is yes.
Excellent. So the question I suppose I have, and I don't know much about Amazon Lumberyard. I know a lot about Amazon services in general, but Amazon Lumberyard is, so you showed an architecture for your build server and process that quite frankly was astounding how fast that major build process go from 6 to 7 hours to 20 minutes. That's incredible. Dead House Sonata will also be running on AWS, and Lumberyard is an engine, but does that engine provision the hardware that's going to be, or the IaaS, infrastructure as a service, or functions as a service with lambdas and things like that you're going to be able to use to power the game? I saw you mentioned some services there like API Gateway and Cognito. Is that, does the Lumberyard, does that enable the developers to set that up, or is that something that's separate outside of the game development piece?
Well, the answer is both. They're separate outside, but there is integration of Lumberyard into those services that make it, fairly easy. And there's more to come with that. But absolutely right. The game development process is very, very different than the game itself. And many games run on AWS that don't use Lumberyard, and you can use AWS with pretty much any kind of gaming engine. It could be your own homegrown engine, whether it be Unity or something else. It all works up in the AWS cloud. So a lot of those services are independent of what engine you're using. And however, I would say the journey that we went on really changed how we would put these different services together. And I don't know how much it comes out, but some of the concepts that we're talking about with Dead House Sonata now, I don't know how fully fleshed out they could have been conceptually without understanding where the cloud's going and all the things that we're doing now. So it's kind of like this symbiotic relationship is the way I would describe it. And I always feel, I guess we're in a position where it just so happens that the guy who's running the company is into computer science, not a tech dummy. And when it comes to, selling us on a certain type of technology, I can, to some extent, not as well as some of the guys at the company who know much more about it than I do. But I can kick the tires on feasibility and what does this mean for workload and what is this going to mean for the company? So some people did not like us moving out of the office. And one of the things we were talking about earlier with all these things too, is sort of the impact on the social environments. And if you're self-sufficient and motivated, these environments are amazing because you can work from home, you set your own hours. If you want to stay up late, you don't have to worry about driving home from the office late at night or anything like that. You can just walk and roll up to bed and you're good. And you balance your own timeline. That's awesome. But where it's more difficult is if you're like business development, trying to do deals with other groups. That loss of face-to-face contact makes business deals so much harder, where 1 or 2 is what it used to take when I'd say we go to GDC or fly to Asia, or you have a face-to-face meeting, you shake someone's hand, you have drinks, you get that sort of person to person, you get to know that person. Those things are much harder business-wise. So there's some benefits and there's some downside. And I think it's the same across the board for these different types of infrastructures. So that being said and done, it's a mix of everything, I would say, from your specific architectural question, if that makes sense. It might not.
It does. No, thank you. And yeah, transitioning from the office to the remote has definitely been an interesting experience, I know, for many companies and organizations over the years, or over the past year.
Yeah, I'm very much regretting not knowing about zero clients before I sent I'm an IT manager during the day, and I really regret not knowing about this before I sent my 25 users home with their workstations, and for the past year have been operating my IT department out of my house. Mailing workstations, that would made it so much faster. I have a non-technical question. Sorry, Chris and Sean.
No,
but
please.
I got very excited when you were getting into kind of the gameplay and just story content within a game universe that's driven by the community as well as the direct player. So I was definitely that player. When I would get into a game or a game series, I would get absorbed into the universe. I would get every side quest, every novella, every comic. I needed to suck all of the content out of the universe. I needed to know everything, like an encyclopedia. And then then that brought me into fan fiction, fan art, and stuff like that too. Just anything I could get out of it. So this idea gets me very excited about what's possible when you have something that's generating that content, your fan art, your fan written stories, these what if scenarios that could actually be generated. Super exciting, and for a community what we've all dreamed of. It's that Ready Player One kind of universe. So my question would be, when you're the owner or the creator of the source content, how does that work? And maybe obviously you might not even know yet. How does that work in terms of retaining ownership over content? How do you control that in terms of copywriting? That's a big question, but.
Well, yeah. So I'm not a lawyer. So I would say there's ways that you just basically say, I would say you would set terms where if it's up in the cloud, it's part of the Dead House universe. However, whoever writes it gets copyright for it. So there's different ways that, some things have to be maintained, I guess. But I think the legal ownership issues are far less exciting compared to what you were talking about just before that so let's say it just is possible, because I think it is, and we're going to do it. If we somehow crash and burn on, trademarks and copyrights, I doubt it, but so be it. I'd rather try it and then see it fail. But I just think that, there's ways to figure the legal ways out so everyone wins. But now imagine this. Imagine that you have a story that's so big because it's created by millions of players that you can just go on forever and you'll never see everything that's in the universe. Isn't that exciting? And then what does that mean? You're actually truly creating worlds. So now you have years and years and years. So 10 years from now, when Dead House Sonata has had millions of players, hopefully, playing the game, you have this incredible amount of story in the universe that is 1,000 times bigger than the Silmarillion, because Tolkien was only one man. We're here, there won't, to be clear, the millions of people playing on average won't be as good as, obviously Tolkien was, because he was a genius and his writing still excites me today. However, the amount of work that's going to come out of that in its totality, I would argue, will be better than the Silmarillion. And so now we're talking about, it's the data, it's the big data, it's the game universe. That's the cool part. And I would say ownership is less important compared to the ability to let people experience it in your universe. That's the key. So the key is giving people that experience and giving it in such a way that they feel it's worthwhile and would spend their time on it and maybe spend money within that service. That's the key. That's where I think everything is at. And you cannot do that without understanding clouds, because it goes way beyond. Copyright laws and trademark laws are like 20 years behind where everyone is right now. But these kind of things that we're talking about right now are like, wow. And we're not talking about anything that's particularly groundbreaking when it comes to data, but we are talking about, when it's coming to groundbreaking, is taking all of these different services and putting them together, like combining, obviously big data, databases, and, scraping that data, what's useful to tell a story. You don't want to, what do you care about this adventure? What don't you care about this adventure? And then over time, just working on these, algorithms to the point where you did this one story, this one adventure, you come back, we write it in your journal, and you tell us, well, this is really good. This is a really good summary of what I did. Or maybe that's a terrible summary. What was really important was this. And we just keep working on that over time till we get an experience where people go, that's what I want.
Yeah, cool. Just the potential of that to see, like, to just have that infinite content within, universes that they could, yeah, so cool.
It's very interesting. And imagine being able to, contribute that yourself. And then, imagine running into someone and hearing them tell about a story. And then you find out it was you that was actually on that adventure. You're like, that was me. I did that. And they're talking about it. That's really cool. What would that be like? That to me, that's what I want to create. I would love to have that experience myself. And that's the experience we want to give to everyone else. And again, can only be done through this whole idea of the medium as a message and understanding clouds. This would not have been possible 20 years ago.
One quick question. I know that we're running a little bit low on time, but there was a quick question from the audience. What is Project Dios? It was on one of your slides.
Oh yeah, sorry. I go so fast and I get so hyper, I forget. So Project Dios is a collaborative effort by a bunch of groups that have, they make tools for people who play traditional tabletop Dungeons and Dragons games. So what they do, so Project Dios is a combination of World Anvil and a map making tool called Dungeon Fog and a couple others, where you can literally create a singular dungeon all the way up to an entire continent. And then World Anvil is telling the stories that link into this. So you have a tool set that allows you to write stories, create maps, do adventures down to the room with the encounters. We're going to take these tools and integrate them, which are being made for many purposes. We're going to integrate these tools into Deadhouse Sonata, so you don't have to. Opening up a game engine is very, very hard. Doing 3D models, all that stuff is really hard. So we want to empower content creators that want to tell a story. So if you can draw a map, a 2D map, and create a dungeon, and you have this really cool story, we want to have people who have those kind of ideas to be bringing straight into the game. So these are groups we've partnered with for over the last year, and we're working to complete integration, again, on the cloud with many different groups where you can just log in, submit your stuff. And the idea is to create a micro platform where people can actually sell their stuff as well. So it's not just mod for us for free and become slave labor. It is, hey, let's create an economy where if you're really passionate about what you do, you might be able to make some money if you do something pretty popular,
That was going to be one of the questions too, because it seems like there's a lot of capacity out there for people to create like really good creative content, like you said, like that with the Game of Thrones analogy, that if you could remunerate these people as well, and get some of the not just the hardcore fanboys that really want to get in, and fangirls that want to get into it, but some of the amateur or professional game builders that would love to like spend time in the game, but they got mouths to feed. They can't be spending their evenings doing something like that. If they could get a little kickback for their mods or their storylines or their content, then that'll step up that level of game for the people that are adding to it.
Well, so I think it's a similar, I totally agree. Obviously that's our philosophy. I get very excited about it. And I think about it on the same level of Game of Thrones. So with Game of Thrones, people were coming up with story ideas. Well, empower people to do everything that you can within the universe, remove as many technical hurdles as you can. So our goal would be to be able to create a game without opening the engine, still tell a coherent storyline and have a complete adventure. Well, I would argue, just like Game of Thrones had a hard time competing with the universe when it came to telling stories, I would say us as a company, no matter how large we got, would have a hard time competing with the ability of people to create cosmetic content and adventures, because we would just be, and rather than compete, why not embrace, and why not remunerate in a way that it's a huge win-win for everyone. So if someone, as an example, created some mod that they sold for a dungeon adventure, we'll call it the something original, the Dungeon of Elemental Evil for Dead House Sonata, and they decide to sell it for, it's a complete adventure. It takes, 7 hours to go through with a group of 4 to 6 people. They sell it for $10. Just so happens they sell 1 million copies within Dead House. Well, they just made a ton of money. Who wins? We do, because people can play this awesome adventure, Dungeon of Elemental Evil. The person who created it obviously just made a whole ton of money. Right. And they can do it within a universe that they know of. And, obviously you have to worry. You can't let copyrighted material just slip in and all that kind of stuff. So that in some sense is a really bad example, but assuming it's original content, and assuming, you have to screen for certain things that you don't want to get in there, that essentially keep it legal, is the way I would describe it. Right. The potential is pretty awesome in my opinion. So.
All right, so don't make the main bad guy Donkey Kong, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that could provide particular issues, unless we decided, to buy that IP.
Right, of course.
Or license it and say, yeah, go ahead. So that would be a different story. But that also opens up the potential of, these other things as well, right? Like, work with other groups who have IPs, and someone wants to put that universe into our universe. If we, there's so many different things that you can do with this particular model. I would think that there's a lot of potential. I'm certain we haven't thought of them all. Where this is undiscovered territory. It's like, it's like I don't know how many people ski, but it's like getting on that ski mountain and you realize you're the first person to go down the slope, and it's just nothing but just untouched snow, right? So yeah.
Nice, very cool. All right, so we have run over, but have all the questions been taken care of? Dennis, we could do this for hours like we did last time. It's just it's wonderful talking with you as always.
Oh, thank you.
Ziggy,
feeling is
Sean,
mutual. It's super exciting talking with you guys. So,
isn't it? It's so much fun.
All right. We do have one more question in the Q&A if you're willing, Dennis.
Sure, of course. Yeah.
So this question is from Adam, and he asks if you're familiar with Divinity Original Sin 2's Master Mode. It sounds similar to the idea with it basically being a Dungeons and Dragons mode in engine that allows, people to make their own adventures.
Yeah, I would think it's similar. It is similar to that, and I think the whole idea of allowing people to create their own adventures in game is not a new subject in itself. I think where it starts to change is when you have a persistent universe within the cloud, where you start having an amalgamation of all of these things where people really can truly enjoy, and if you can provide a platform where there's economic incentives to do it beyond just the I love this. And there are many games that have had dungeon editors and make your own adventure. And I think typically these are plagued by what I would call, limited technical issues with the engine at the time, because after 10 years later, it's like, these tools are really great, but the engines are really old. Or just bad interfaces, and you're limited on what you can actually do. And where I think this is slightly different is because we're taking tools that people use on live board games and for storytelling and in-depth storytelling that are, I would say, cloud-based and separated technology-wise from our actual engine itself. It's actually more freeing, and theoretically we should be able to do more creatively, and then it's up to us to get that into the engine. And I think that's a lot better methodology than giving you our game design tools that we use to build the engine. Because when we're making this game, our guys are like, I only had 5, 10, 20, 30 crashes today. That's okay. That's a good day. Where a typical user who's not, in the grind and know what it's like to make a video game, that would be totally unacceptable and be a complete fail. So yes, I think it's similar. And I think we all stand on the shoulders of giants. And I think that it's the whole idea of taking that next step up into, once again, I don't want to sound like a broken record or beat a dead horse, but it's the medium is the message, and today's medium are clouds. And this whole idea of clouds and how that all works is fundamentally changing the way that we would implement these things. Hope that makes sense.
All right. Sean, Chris, any other questions you see floating out there?
No, ma'am. I think we've exhausted Denis yet again.
Fantastic. All right. So with that, we will conclude tonight's vBrownBag. You can watch the show later on when it will be posted on YouTube, and you will can also find it by following us on Twitter at vBrownBag. And with that, we bid you good evening.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.